Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Learn to Code series with Swift Playgrounds. And we're actually going to be exploring the last chapter of Learn to Code 2 arrays, which are basically our way to have list and listed content. So as I mentioned, arrays are ordered lists. So let's imagine that we're making ourselves an ice cream sundae. We need to first think of the ingredient and the order that we'd place them in the bowl. So the first ingredient, might be the ice cream, then the banana, the chocolate, and then the cherries. And we definitely want to put these in the correct order. So we can define an array by placing the same type of items inside the square bracket, each one of them separated by a comma. So we have all of our items here under our ingredients within the square brackets, and then this comma separating all of them. We can modify an array by using its index. So when we have an array, our index, the first item is actually represented by the number 0. So in this case, the ice cream is number 0. We can then overwrite or change what's in that index's position. So if we want the index item at number 1, the second item, to then be a strawberry, we can. And then we can change number 3, which I believe were the cherries. Yeah, so that would be the fourth item with the confetti sprinkle. So why is 0 the first index for this item? The computers actually start counting at 0. So the index of the first item is 0, and then 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Arrays also come with methods, so we can actually call and to perform simple actions. So we can remove the item at 2, as well as we can add also any of these items. So we can use the append, followed by the item we want to append, to add it to the very end. So in this case, we'd be adding it to number 3, aka the fourth slot. So whenever we are appending things, it's going to go all the way at the end of the index, but we can insert at a specific position. So in this case, we put the strawberry at number 1, and this time, because we use insert, it's going to push everything over, right? So now the banana, which was previously 1, just got shifted over a space. We can also perform the same action on each item in an array, process known as iteration. So we can kind of loop through with a for loop in order to place all the items in the bowl. So it's going to start at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4. I assume we'll be using all these tips and tricks as we go forward, as we explore arrays. Strap in, it might be a little bit of a long one, as there's tons of playgrounds to cover in this lesson. Okay, our first goal is to essentially create an array, and we want to place the characters within those rows. So it wants us to first actually just run the code and see what happens. We also have some comments. Oh my god, look at all the blues that are spawning. That's pretty funny. We also have comments, and you can tell that they're comments by this grayed out text. Now this gives information about the code, but the app doesn't run it. And we can type it in plain English or whatever your preferred language is in order to kind of say, okay, this is what this bit of code underneath here does. We typically put our comments before the lines of code. So this says add any missing rows into our array. So currently we're missing 2. So we have 0, 1, 3, 4. So let's go ahead and add the 2. In this case, this comment saying, hey, this is something we need to do, whereas this comment is saying what it does. So let's go ahead and run our code. We might also choose to add 5. I think we're missing 1 at the end here. Yep. All right, let's go ahead and run our code now that we have all of the characters ready to go. And there we are. So the place characters at, it's making sure that it's going through each of those different indexes and placing the character depending on what that number is. Okay, iteration exploration, which is a pretty fun name. So the challenge is to iterate over an array, placing a gem and a switch at each location. So in the code below, we can use the columns array to place a gem and a switch. This process is known as iteration. I like how you can also click on these for like more of a detail too. So that's the act of repeating a process, such as performing the same action on each item in an array. Because for every one of these tiles here, we're going to make sure that we have not only a gem, but also a switch. So we have our columns. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, which is great. Now we need to give our loop variable a name and pass it into our array. Okay, so we can, say for each column, and then the array name, well, we're going to be referencing our columns array. So let's go ahead and reference that. And you can actually use the autofill to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. All right, we also have the place a gem and a switch at each column. So the first one we have is gem at column, and we're going to be referencing the column variable. So we can think of this 4 as kind of like the number. So when we run our code here, we'll see that for every single one of our columns in the array, it's going to go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're reiterating over the array. We're just kind of passing through the information from the array name right here. And we're kind of treating this as a variable. So when we do our for loops where we have the 1 ... 3 where we kind of have that range. So instead of using numbers, we're using the variable values of the arrays, which are also numbers, but we're able to really finite control where we are placing and using these different kind of coordinates and these different kind of elements being placed. So if we do our world.place again, do the autofill. Let's now do the switch. So again, what column do they want to go to? Well, we're going to grab that variable number from each element in the array. So column, and then the row is going to be number 1. If we weren't to do number 1 and we were to do 0 or perhaps 2, it would probably look pretty funny because it'd be in the water. Let's go ahead and run our code and see if that is the solution indeed. So we're going over and every time we're placing the gem, then we're placing the switch. And then we're saying, okay, that's done. We're going to move on to the next number. And again, because there's 5 of these elements, it's going to repeat 5 times with the appropriate column number being passed through. If it changes to be row 2, I kind of just want to see what it looks like if they go in the water here. There you go. Not too great, but that's why we still have control over the row. Now, if we had a separate array called rows, we could of course pass through that information as well and make any of those changes to our program. So we're just grabbing the information from the array. We're then looping through it using iteration, which is pretty cool. Stacking blocks. So we want to check out the code below. Instead an array of int values, we now have an array type of coordinate. So we have the coordinates here, columns and columns. Now something that we need to keep in mind for arrays, and I know it was mentioned in the kind of opening tutorial, is we need to make sure that they're using the same data types. So if I have a string, I need to make sure that I'm passing along other strings. If I have an integer, so on and so forth. So for the coordinates, we need to make sure that every time we're passing one through, it needs to be a coordinate. So it wants us to place 5 blocks at each one of the coordinates. So here we have 0, 0, 3, 3, and it wants us to insert some new coordinates. Let's go ahead and try to create a coordinate, and we actually do have an autofill option here. I'm going to do 3, 0. And we're going to add a comma because we're going to another item of coordinate. And then we'll do 0, 3 for this one. So we kind of have a little bit of a differential, still with using the number 3. Now it wants us to place 5 blocks at each coordinate. Okay, so we have coordinate in array name. So our array is the block location. So let's make sure we select that. And now we need to use our world place. We can use a little bit of a trick by using a for in loop because we want to go and repeat this 5 times, right? Place 5 blocks at each coordinate. So for I in 1 ... 5, we want to repeat it 5 times. We're going to add our brace here and we'll use our world, if I could spell it properly, place item at. We want to be placing those blocks. We're going to be using the one with the empty argument brackets. And for the coordinate, well, we're looking for that coordinate in. Remember, it's going to be grabbing that information. It's going to be saying, okay, for coordinate and block location. So it's going to go through each one of these within the loop. Okay, let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. All right, so we're placing over here at 0, 0, we're placing our 5 blocks. Now we're at 3, 3. Now we're at 3, 0. And then we'll be over at 0, 3. And each one of them, we are placing those 5 blocks as we're looping through it 5 times. So we have our coordinate, which takes the 2 integer values, which are whole numbers, so numbers that don't have a decimal value. We're able to loop through those as easy as pie. Okay, so we want to, for this one, of getting in order, place blue, hopper, and the expert in order by height. Interesting. Wait, who's the tallest? I don't know. I feel like Hopper's pretty tall. I don't know. So we can use dot notation to call a method on an array. So we have an example here of favorite foods, and we can call the remove at 2. So we can remove the sushi here. And again, we have that insert. We're going to pass the value and the location. Okay, so in the characters array below, we want to remove the portal and gem. Then we're going to insert an instance type of expert so the characters are arranged from shortest in the front row, row 0, to tallest in the back. Looks like we can't edit this array at all. So it's going to give us the characters of Blue and Hopper within this characters array. So although we can't edit it with code, we can edit it with the inserts or the removals. So let's go ahead and start by removing the portal. So if we look at our characters, which is this array here, right? With our example, favorite foods, we look at the variable name of the array. So in this case, this one's called characters. We'll use dot, and we want to remove at. So in this case, we want to remove the portal. The portal is the second item within the array. So that would be represented by the number 1. Remember, 0, 1, 2, 3. Then it wants us to remove the gem. So we'll take our characters dot remove at. This time we're going to be removing number 2. So if we look at this and we go 0, 1, 2, wait a second, that'd be Hopper. Well, because our code runs sequentially, if our portal's removed, we would then go character, character, gem. Therefore, the gem would finally be at number 2. Then we want to insert the expert. So if we remember, we're going to do our characters, then we're going to use the dot insert. We can use our autofill. So what are we putting in there? Well, we're adding an instance of the expert. So we're going to choose the one with the empty brackets. And then at position, we want to go with number 1. I think the expert's middle height. Blue's pretty short and Hopper's really tall. If it's not correct, we can always fix it later. Okay, let's go ahead and run our code and see if we're right. So again, we'll kind of talk through this. We're first going to remove the portal at 1 because this is the second item in the array. We don't even really get to see it because before it's populated, our characters are kind of appearing already. So we were able to modify the array so we never saw the portal and we never saw the gem. Instead, we saw our characters from shortest to tallest. Honestly, the expert's not that much taller than Blue. But I definitely knew Hopper was the tallest. Hopper's, super duper tall. Now we also have some additional options in case you want to explore them. We have the remove first, which would remove the item at 0. We then have remove last, which would remove the kind of last element in the array. So in this case, if we just ran it as is, we'd remove that gem, and then remove all, which will actually clear out that entire array, but use these ones carefully. All right, appending to an array. Our goal is to append an empty array based on coordinate properties. Adding each item to an array individually is really repetitive. It absolutely is. So what if we can create a set of rules for the coordinates to include in our array? Oh my goodness. Okay, so we're going to create an empty array. So we can use this after our variable name to declare its type and then assign it an empty array. So for example, we'll create an array that's empty of new locations. Now we're going to set this to be something that accepts coordinates by using the colon and the kind of type here of coordinate, then equals an empty array. So we're still using those square brackets to say this is going to be a list of something, but it's not going to hold anything. Then we're going to iterate over all coordinates and check the column and row properties of each coordinate. If the column property of a coordinate is greater than 5 or its row property is less than 4, then we're going to append it to our empty array. Then place, okay, there's a lot going on here, but we do have the comments in our code to hopefully allow us to kind of work through the different steps here. Okay, so we have a let all coordinates and a variable of block set ready for us at the start. You can't change these, and the things we can change is a for in loop and a second for in loop. Okay, so for coordinate in all coordinates, I don't think we need to really change that. We now need to handle the logic to check for coordinates with a column greater than 5 or row less than 4. So we can see here it's giving us a hint with the or. We know that we don't need to be using the double ampersand here because that would check for and. Let's change that to be our 2 straight lines here to represent or. And if we want the number to be greater than 5, well, we definitely need to change that number. And for the less than, it would be 4. Okay, not too crazy. Let's handle the appending of the coordinate to the block set. So we would look at the variable of block set. This is the name of the list here. And then we would do the dot notation. We would then choose append. And then what are we inserting? Well, we're inserting that coordinate. Then for our second for in, we need a for each coordinate in block set, place 6 blocks. Okay, so for the item, it would be a coordinate item. Then what is it in? In block set. Then for our logic, we then need to just place 6 blocks. So we can do our for loop again to repeat over it 6 times, and then we'll do our world.place. What are the items? Well, we want a block, and then the coordinate we're grabbing from the for in, which is that value of coordinate. Okay, let's go ahead and see if that is correct. I thought this one was going to be pretty crazy, but the instructions were actually very, very clear, especially with the comments. So I think it's really nice to have the comments in the code blocks themselves, so we always know what it is we're doing. We don't have to double, triple check the instructions here. Okay, it looks like our world is properly building. I'm just going to speed it up a little bit. And there we go. So let's double check that we're on the right coordinates. 0, 1, 0, 0. Goes all the way to 7, 1. Let's run it even faster. We are building the world as we see fit. So these are the 4s. And there we are. Those are the 5s. So we're essentially creating this pattern because we're looking at the rows and we're also looking at the columns, right? So if it's greater than or the row is less than 4, either of those conditions, and we can see with these coordinates that it does make sense. Cool. And there's our little world. So we can use these arrays in conjunction with the world building that we learned last time to create our own worlds and puzzles, which is pretty cool. Okay, we have the island builder. Are we tired of being landlocked? Do we get boats? So our challenge is to build an island that is surrounded by sea. So maybe this time we'll be using the place water. Ooh, pretty cool stuff here. So to add water, we're just going to, just like we've been doing the blocks, we're going to be calling upon the water with the empty brackets. So after we've appended coordinates to each array, place blocks for each coordinate in the island array and wait for the water to kind of populate. Okay, so we're going to have a sea array, and we're also going to have the island array. Okay, so to start, we're going to create 2 empty arrays of the type coordinate. So we're going to create these as variables because we want them to change and update, right? It wouldn't make sense to have a constant array that's empty. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And we're going to call this one island. And this is going to conform, as it says up here, to the coordinate. So we're going to put that within our square brackets. Then we're going to have it equal an empty array. So using those square brackets to say that this is a list of something. Then we'll create another one of C, also of the type coordinate. Oh, I did the wrong autofill. There we go. Equals the empty array. All right, now we have a for in, so for coordinate in all coordinates. So we have the all coordinates up here. We have an if condition and we want to append it to the island array. Okay, so what condition can we use here? All right, these coordinates should be in the center of the map and might be a 3, 3 or 4, 4. Okay, we can look at a condition here and we can look at the coordinate dot column. We can also look at the row. So we can use our logic here. So we could say if coordinate dot column is greater than 3 and the coordinate dot column, so if we're going to 3, maybe 7, I think 7's kind of the middle. So, and the coordinate dot column is less than 7. Now we can also handle our rows, and we can use our 3 and 7 again. Again, these numbers are pretty subjective, so kind of figure out what's the middle in your head and go from there. So we're going to add the additional and. We'll now look at the coordinate dot row, and we'll say if that is less than 3 and the coordinate dot row is greater than 7. So this should kind of create us that square island, or maybe rectangular at this point. So if these conditions are met, we need to append these to the island array. So we'll look at our island array dot append, add the new element, and that's based on the coordinate. Or else we can append the C array, so do the exact same thing, C dot append at that coordinate. So this should populate kind of all around, because the else statement is saying, well, go everywhere else. If this condition isn't met, go ahead and run this. Okay, for our island array, we need to place blocks. So we'll do a for loop. So we'll say for I in 1 dot dot dot. Let's do 4 times, as it wanted us to do a 3 by 3 or a 4 by 4. So let's do the 4 by 4 here. We'll then add a brace, and we can say world dot place. We want the item of a block for our island. And for the coordinate, well, we can grab it from the coordinate. Oh, we need to put the item here first. So for the coordinate in island, then we'll place it at the coordinate. Okay, and we'll do the exact same thing for the C here. So for coordinate in C, I believe is what we called it. So we don't need to do a for in loop here because we're kind of populating the rest of the world with the water. But what we do need to do is actually remove these old blocks for the C. So we're going to actually have our world.remove at coordinate. And then after that, because it is sequential, actually instead of remove items at, I think we could do the remove all blocks at and keep that coordinate. And then we'll go ahead and do our world.place, and the item will be a water. Yep, that looks great. And we'll have it be that coordinate. Okay, let's go ahead and run through our code and see if we got it. I'm going to do it on fastest because we're not really like navigating through puzzles like with a little character. Instead, we're kind of building our island here. Okay, so we're removing, look at all the tiles that we're removing. That's pretty funny. So we have our little island. It's actually only 3 by 3. And you can see that it's keeping these other tiles here, which is great. So we have our little island. So I think if we wanted a 4 by 4, we might have actually had to use the kind of greater than or equal to 3. I'm actually curious. Let's go ahead and check that out before we move on. I think my math was a little bit off. Let's go ahead and run it real fast. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the greater than or equal to 3. See, my math teacher told me I'd be using math for the rest of my life, and they were right. They were right with those operators, right? So I'll let this run, then we'll have our 4 by 4 island. And there we go. Appending removed items. So our goal is to remove coordinates from one array while appending them to another, or maybe not those specific ones. Sometimes we'll want to use an item that you removed from an array. Fortunately, a remove item is stored for a short time. Oh, so maybe it is that one. So we can assign it to a variable or append it into another array. So we have an example here of the variable of right column, the world column 7, create a new array where we can append that item we're removing. Interesting, interesting. This is some pretty high-tech stuff. Okay, so our goal is to create one empty array of coordinates, use a method to create another array of all coordinates in row 2. Each time the outer loop runs, remove an item from the array and append it to our empty array. Step 3, we want to iterate over our empty array, placing it inside the character, placing an instance of type character at each coordinate. Oof, okay. So let's start off and we can go through the comments one by one. So create an array of all coordinates in row 2. We'll create a variable, we'll call it row 2. Makes sense in my head. This is going to equal the world dot, oh man, I think we want to get the coordinates. And for the in columns, and we'll want to grab the coordinates row, right? So world.coordinates in rows in row 2 is what our instructions say. Okay, that makes sense. Then we want to create an empty array of all the coordinates. So we can create another variable and we can say, you know, maybe removed coordinates. That should make sense. And this is going to conform to our coordinates as we've done before, and it'll equal the empty array. We've already done this. Okay, now we have a for loop. So for I in 1 to 12, we want to be looking at a for in. So we're going to be looking at the coordinate in our variable here of row 2. For the coordinate that it's placing it at, we're going to reference the variable of the same name coordinate. And then after this, we have a comment to remove a coordinate and append it to our empty array. So we're going to take a look at our removed coordinates that we had created above, and we'll use our append to add it to the array. And we're going to be appending it to row 2. We're going to be doing the dot remove. We're going to be adding our brackets to say, okay, remove it where? At 0. So it's going to take that first element. It's going to then plug it into the kind of empty array. Then we want to place a character for each coordinate added to our empty array. So we'll use our coordinate again. You can actually name these anything as long as it's specific and consistent, but we're going to be using the coordinate so we know exactly what we're doing. And for here, what array are we going to be placing them in? Well, that would be the removed coordinates. Then we'll do our world.place, and we'll do a character. We're going to have a bunch of blues on the screen, and then we'll be placing them at that coordinate. Cool, so we're removing, we're then adding. Oh, we have an error. Check our code. Variable row 2 equals world.coordinates in rows 2. Oh, this should be in the square brackets because it's an array after all. Okay, and we are off. Go ahead and run this on fastest. Again, this is row 2, as we can see here. Kind of creating like these steps. And there we go. That was pretty cool, pretty cool. Did we know that we can initialize an instance of character? We can choose which character that we can actually place. Oh, okay. Hold on here. Where are we appending? So we're placing our character down here. We do name. Let's do dot hopper. Run this again. And there we go. Our army of hoppers here. That's pretty sweet. Okay, fixing index out of range errors. So we can access items in an array by using its index, allowing us to use the item just like any other variable. So we have characters that we saw last time. So we have 0, 1, and 2. So here we are kind of calling some code. So see here we have the 0 and 2. So the toggle switch, that would cause byte to toggle the switch, and 2 would have hopper jump. But if we try to access an item that doesn't exist, this will cause an index out of range error. So this, if this was say number 3, 4, 5, 6, right? If we don't have something that can support that index, it's going to be an error and a bug that actually prevents our program from running. So the code below contains an index out of range error. Let's go ahead and run it and we can see that error in real time, and then we can figure out what's going on here. All right, so it looks like we have some guys doing some crazy things, but oh, my program just crashed. Well, it certainly does have an error. All right, so let's take a look at the code of what's going on here. So know how many instances of blue are in our array. So we have a loop that goes up to 9. Okay, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Got it. Then we have our placements. Everything seems on the up and up here, but we have to find the index out of range error. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so I think what's happening is number 10 is outside of our array. To have the basically index position of 10, we would need to have 11 elements. However, we definitely don't with this loop of 1 through 9. Okay, let's go ahead and run our code again and see if that fixes it and doesn't cause our entire program to freeze and crash out. There we go. Awesome. So finding and fixing those bugs is a very important part of being a coder. It's part of problem solving and a lot of what I do on the daily basis. It's like, aren't you the one who writes the code? Yeah, but I'm also the one who has to debug it. Just how it's the way of life. Ready? Next up is generating a landscape. So the code at the bottom of the page contains 2 arrays. We have the height and all coordinates. So we need to use the heights array to determine how many blocks to stack on each coordinate in all coordinates. To do this, we'll need a specific int value at each index in heights. So here we have the variable of heights 7, 3, 2, 4 for I in 1 dot 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 heights 0. Okay, so this would look at number 7 first, right? Because that's the 0 indexed kind of spot. The for loop will run 7 times. Now, what if we want to access a different index for each coordinate? We need to store the index value as a variable and increment it from there. Okay, but we have to be careful. If the index is greater than the number of items in the heights array, we'll try to access a value that doesn't exist. This will give us that same index out of range error. We can make sure that our index value is never greater than heights.count, the number of items within our array. So the dot count is going to look at all the different, numbers here. So in this case, it would be 4 items, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 items. There we go. And then we have an example on how to fix that. All right, let's go ahead and give this one a shot. So for this one, we need to add different integer values. Does it matter what values we choose? I don't know. Let's try some different values. Let's try off with 1. Let's do 0, 5, 7, or 6, 7. Let's try these different values. Then for the all coordinates, we'll want to use the world.all possible coordinates as it suggested before. Okay, then we have our variable index, which is 0. For coordinates in all coordinates. I don't think there's anything we need to change here. I think we just need to place the blocks and adjust our heights. And we can leave our heights index as is. You might need to press that just so it gets confirmed. Sometimes with placeholders, it's a little bit weird. So we need to place the block. Well, to do that, we would just do our world.place item at. So we're doing a block, and the coordinate would be that coordinate variable that we're getting. This is a kind of nested loop in here. And then we would need to increment the index. So we'd have our index plus equals 1. Incrementing just means adding it and increasing it by 1. Okay, so we're going to have the heights of 1, 0, 5, 6, and 7. So let's see. So here's our 1, here's our 0. This should be our 5, then our 6 and 7. So these ones should look like staircases over here. And you can see that we're repeating that same process over here. Pretty cool how it's kind of going around the entirety of the map. Let's go ahead and run this on fastest. And we'll have our own custom design. Now you can choose whatever numbers you would like within the heights integer. Our logic should work the entire way through. You can choose to have as many elements as you want as well. Although I wouldn't put too many in there. But you can see that's repeating the pattern, and it's going to go all the way until we kind of hit the bounds of our world here. Creates like a cool checker pattern. Look at that. Very interesting stuff. Alrighty, randomized lands. What if we wanted to use the random values inside our heights? Now you're speaking my language. I love randomly generated things. We can use the random int function to generate a random integer using the values that we pass in. So if we look at the code below, we have the random int from 0 to 12. So we're giving it a range, although we're not doing the range like we normally do with the 1 ... 20 here. We're saying from 0, to 12. This is pretty cool. I'm actually pretty excited because every time that we run this program, we're actually going to be building an essentially different world. Okay, let's go ahead and jump. I'm excited. Let's go ahead and jump into this one. So we first need to append random numbers to heights. So let's go ahead and create a for loop. So I'll say for I in 1 ... 12. Go ahead and add our braces here, and we can have our heights.append new element. And for this one, we're going to be doing our random int, and we're going to provide it a range. We can do from 0 to whatever number we want. I'm going to choose the number 9, from 0 to 9. Again, you can do whatever custom range you want. Then we have our index, coordinates. I don't think we need to change anything here. We do have an if that does call out a comment card right here. Do something interesting if the current height is equal to 0. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the world.remove at. So maybe remove items. I don't think we want to remove all blocks. Remove items at the coordinate. Let's try that out. And then it wants us to do something different, such as placing the character if current height is greater than 10. Here, let's go ahead and change this then. Instead of 9, let's do 12. So we'll do our world.place character, and let's have it specifically be the name of, oh, we already have Blue as a character. Let's do Hopper. Put them at the coordinate. Do something different, such as placing water with this else if statement. Okay, well, we know how to do that as well. This time we'll probably want to use the remove items as well, so the water looks better. So world.remove items at coordinate, and then we'll place that water. Ooh, I'm gonna fix my spacing here. World.place items at the water at the coordinate. If we do want any more rules to customize our world, we can. Otherwise, I think I'll be pretty happy with this. Let's go ahead and run it and see if we got it right. Well, I guess, I don't know if we necessarily got things right, but we can kind of just see it in action here. Oh, and so there we go. When our structure is really high, we then placed our character. Although I don't think we've placed any water yet. Where did this thing go? What on earth is happening? This is certainly an interesting world. But again, every time we run it, it's going to be a little bit different. My goodness, what is going on here? I'm going to run it again and see what happens. But randomization certainly gives that power to create something different each time. What I really like about random, I guess, generation is it's kind of always different. Sometimes I might be cursing RNG, which stands for random number generation. Especially I play a lot of games that do utilize those things, but I think it adds a lot of spice, a lot of variety, because you never really know what you're going to get. Every time is slightly different. Look how many hoppers we have at the front this time. my goodness, that is a lot of hoppers. And we could even change this, like if you wanted your range to be from 8 to 12, 9 to 10, right? You're allowed to really set that range to whatever you see is, best for your program. There we go. This is certainly a masterpiece. All right, next we have another way. Oh, it's kind of popping off the screen there. Another way to create an array. Interesting. I'm always down to learn new ways. So our goal is to create an array of existing items. Not only can we make an array to place items, we can also make an array out of items that already exist in the puzzle world. So for example, we have characters in the world.exist characters at all coordinates. So any character that would be on the screen presumably would then be added to that array. We can iterate over each character, giving them commands such as jump, or even telling them to show us their fancy new dance moves. Wait a second. Dance like no one is watching. They could dance. All right, in the code below, we're going to create an array from existing characters in the puzzle world, then iterate over our array. Okay, let's go ahead and run our code really quick. Oh, we can't even see what the dance moves look like until we fix the errors because of the placeholder. All right, we'll save the dancing for the end, I suppose. So we need to change the height to be the sum of the column and row for each coordinate. Well, when we're talking about sums, that means we're adding two things together. Sum means addition. So we'll then take the coordinates dot column and the coordinates dot row. So that should add those two values together. We then need to initialize an array of existing characters within the puzzle world. So we'll say let characters equals, and then we saw from our example above here, we're going to want to use the world.existing characters at coordinate. Well, we can choose the all coordinates, which is going to grab every single one. And then for our for in loop here, for each of the characters, perform a set of actions. Okay, so for the item, that would be the character. And then the array is the characters array we just created. I want to try out this dance like no one is watching here. Dance. Oh, is there no autofill? Oh, you know why? Because we need to do our character dot dances like no. Okay. And let's also have them do a jump. Right, we need to grab each one of those specific characters. All right, let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Go ahead and create the world, populate it with some characters, and I want to see these homies dance. Okay, we're going to populate the world. It's only going to place characters, as we can see here with this random one. Although we could augment the code to just like fill the world with dancers. But alright, I'm going to adjust the camera. Go ahead and see the dance moves. We're almost done building. I'm kind of disappointed by the dance, but you know what? They're having fun. They're having fun. It's kind of hard to see with the camera here. But yeah. There it is, I guess. It was a performance. Okay, I like this dance better that they're doing now that we complete the puzzle, I'll be honest. Alright, so for the next two pages, these are totally up to you. They're kind of already like good to go and finished. This is something that the next two pages, they really want you to kind of just play around with concepts that you've maybe already previously explored and, create some arrays, create some cool puzzles, and different things for you to create. But for me, who's kind of treating this more of like a walkthrough and tutorial, there's not a whole lot that we need to do to solve these puzzles, because again, this is just about, expressing your own creativity and using the tools that we've created for your own kind of puzzles here. I do like the custom puzzle that they're giving us here to start off with. It's quite interesting. But yeah, so for this one and the next one, you can do whatever you would like, as well as add comments, get in the habit of doing that. Especially if you're going to come back to this, having those comments might really guide you in figuring out what it was you were trying to accomplish at the time. But yeah, I think that is a wrap on the Learn to Code series. I'll probably use the next playground to just show off some memes of my creation there. But it's totally up to you how you want to handle these next two playgrounds. I hope you enjoyed the series. It was pretty fun to create. I think Learn to Code 2 is much more enjoyable for me when we really got to take a lot of the concepts and apply them forward. So if you have completed every single one of these lessons, first of all, congratulations, definitely a marathon. But you are now ready to move on to some of the further builds in the Swift Playgrounds kind of world, as you'll have lots of the concepts ready to actually build out your own app and programs. So on the kind of Swift Playgrounds hub, there are the Learn to Code, series. However, now that you've mastered those fundamentals, you might want to do the keep going with apps, building your first app, even the getting started with machine learning, get started with apps. Those lessons are great. Even the app gallery, if you are, kind of looking to follow more of a templated app build on Swift Playgrounds, there's tons of great resources here that Apple has all for free, as well as on the developer website. If you do own a Mac and you want to, start learning Xcode, I would also check out the developer tutorials. Again, Xcode is only available on Mac, so you might need that machine if you're just previously using iPad. But that is the end of our Learn to Code series. It's been a pretty fun ride. But yeah, I'll include a little bonus here at the end. Otherwise, dream big, code bigger, and we'll see you in the next one.